Esta vez sí lo veo con poca claridad. Esta vez sí lo siento cada vez un poquito más. Ya llegó el momento de ver qué hay detrás. Me quedé sin aliento, que me falta enseñar. Ya no aguanté más y sin sufrir. Vi el universo sobre mí. Tanto tiempo me cuesta entender.
Hello and welcome. That was Con Corazon by Calva Luis, and this is the Giant World of Baseball podcast, a podcast about international baseball and sometimes the San Francisco Giants. I'm your host, the Frilled Shark, or Jacob, if you please. And in this episode, I'm joined by my friend, the premier source for NPB content in English, and fellow delusional San Francisco Giants fan, Yakyu Cosmopolitan, aka Yuri. How's it going, Yuri?
It's going well, Mr. Shark. And yeah, I don't usually get to talk about the Giants in the content that I do. So yeah, excited to do that and then hit on some of the Japanese guys.
Yeah, so you have a very I don't know, unsung heroes job of you don't talk about yourself all that much. You're mostly just presenting the information and interviewing people. So why don't, for the people at home who don't know you, why don't you talk a little bit about yourself, if you're so inclined, and your connection to the San Francisco Giants?
Yeah, so I'm a Japanese American, but I grew up in the US until really I became an adult, mostly in like the West Coast area. Didn't spend too much time in the Bay Area, but my father's side of the family is from the Bay Area, so always watched a lot of Giants baseball growing up, and it was at a really good time in my life too, because it was right when the Giants had their dynasty that I really started to get into baseball. Tim Lincecum being my favorite player growing up, and then 2010, like that was like a great um, kind of first memory for me of them winning the World Series there with Brian Wilson getting that last out. And yeah, I mean, I will say like as the years go on, and I'm in Japan now, like I watch less Giants baseball, but I still obviously keep up with them and I'm rooting for them despite the fact that the Dodgers may have all of the, great Japanese players.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants really don't do themselves any favors. We had the first Japanese player in MLB in Masanori Murakami way, way, way back in the 60s. And then since then, there's really not been that much. I mean, Hideo Nomo, apparently, I think he checked in with the Giants when he was first coming over, but he signed with the Dodgers, and it's been downhill ever since for the Giants' presence in Japan. We had Tsuyoshi Shinjo, who I want to say like 4 or 5-year-old me voted for with the mail-in ballot for the All-Star game. We've had Keiichi Yabu, who's I guess a Bay Area legend. He only played for the A's and the Giants. And I think was it Kensuke Tanaka?
They had him in like 10 years ago or something like that.
Yeah, and we had half a season of Nori Aoki, I believe, as well, and he actually played pretty well for us.
He got hit in the head just so much. Poor Aoki, man.
Yeah, but we don't. The Giants haven't really done themselves any favors, and it's it used to be sort of just an attitude of ownership, from what I can tell. They weren't super just concerned with it, but now as Japanese baseball has kind of started to dominate the zeitgeist more and more. The Giants have been trying to get back into that market, and they've been trying to bring in some posted players, international free agents, and so far it just hasn't worked out for them, not for lack of trying. But in this episode, we're going to be talking about, as you said, both the San Francisco Giants and NPB, I guess, like free agency posting for the 2025-2026 offseason and beyond. So I guess without further ado, let's get into the San Francisco Giants. Let's start with them. So in 2025, the Giants finished a perfect 81-81. They were finally the pure definition of mid. But I didn't really think they played like a mid team. Like I remember this season, there was a lot of really high highs and a lot of really low lows. we started the year with the signing of Willie Adames to play the shortstop position with a 7-year contract. And after he started really slow, he hit 30 home runs, and he broke that curse set by Barry Bonds. And of course, the national media immediately moved the goalpost to, okay, but they haven't had someone hit more than 30 home runs now since Bonds, of course, because we can't just catch a break. And then in June, the Giants highly publicized blockbuster trade for Rafael Devers, star third baseman, first baseman, DH of the Boston Red Sox, giving up top prospects Kyle Harrison and James Tibbs III. And in true Giants fashion, they immediately started skidding after making that win now move. There were 3 All-Stars this year that the San Francisco Giants had, in Logan Webb, Robbie Ray, and Randy Rodriguez, who unfortunately had his arm explode and needed Tommy John, which that and the skid kind of caused the Giants to sell. I think Randy's arm blew up after the trade deadline, but the Giants sold at the trade deadline, mostly just dismantling their bullpen for some prospects, including Drew Gilbert, who lit a fire in the Giants with his white boy shenanigans and got them to basically 500, at which point they couldn't overcome that 500 kind of mark, with the bullpen being literally just pretty much like non-existent. So they wound up finishing 81-81 on the last game of the season. And that resulted in Bob Melvin getting fired. Even though they had a run differential of 21, they were 2 games back of the NL wild card. So finishing 500, they were that close, but they didn't make the postseason. And Bob Melvin got fired, and Tony Vitello is his replacement. And here we are now. So Yuri, I don't know, do you have any like immediate like thoughts when you think about the 2025 Giants, and just sort of how the season went, and I guess kind of thinking about like the needs of the team going into 2026?
Yeah, I mean, 2025, it just felt like a different version of 2022, 2023, 2024, right? They've been so mid or just hovering around mid for so many seasons now, ever since they had that miracle 107 win season. I thought they were personally premature in cutting Gabe Kapler off. Like, I think I'm probably in the minority there, but I wasn't that big on the Bob Melvin hiring. I'm pretty excited about Vitello personally, but yeah, I mean, the Giants, it's just like they just could not get over that skid in, like late June into July. I think it was the correct decision for them to sell. They got a lot back for Tyler Rogers, which I think in the long term is going to look like an amazing steal, especially if they're able to bring back Rogers, which I think is like one of the few things like all Giants fans are united on, is like, we should do this, like just bring him back and add him into the bullpen. But yeah, it was a tough season apart from the fact that they did get Devers, right? And I think that was, something that the Giants fan base has needed for so long. They've needed this kind of potential face of the franchise that you can actually, sell jerseys with and dream on as being like there for the next decade. And yeah, I mean, maybe in terms of things like WAR and things like just, Devers not having like long-term like value in terms of like defense, and if his bat regresses, then the contract's going to look bad. But I think for the Giants, like that's okay. They had money to spend. They take that contract. They didn't have to give up, Birdsong or Eldridge or anything like that. It was only Kyle Harrison. So I think that was a good trade. And yeah, looking ahead to 2026, they obviously need to address the pitching, both the rotation and the bullpen. But I would say rotation wise, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You got to go for one of the big 3 in terms of Tatsuya Imai, maybe a Dylan Cease or a Framber Valdez, Michael King. Like you can throw in like a bunch of guys, but I think Imai for you and I would make us certainly the happiest, not least because getting an Imai potentially opens the door for more Japanese players coming in. That's not like necessarily the case, but I think it helps to have a guy there, like quote unquote recruiting. It would certainly help with like Kaima Taira, for instance. Maybe bring back Unk, Justin Verlander, just like to shore up the back end of the rotation. But I think if they go into next year with like Webb, Ray, Imai, Roop, Verlander, and then like the last spot is up for grabs between like Wizen Hunt, Birdsong, Teng, McDonald, Tidwell. Then they have like quite a bit of depth there, and I think they feel pretty good about it. It's just about can they secure one of those high-end arms like an Amai or a Cease. And then obviously, offensively they have I think they still need like more impact bats, which is tough because they're so like solidified and cemented already on a lot of areas of the diamond. But I see second base as a potential place for upgrade, and I see like one of the corner outfield spots. But I do think it's a little bit tough to address because, again, they're already kind of locked into place with a lot of their players.
For sure. No, I totally agree. And another thing that's just interesting to note about, that pursuit of that like kind of top level pitching is, first of all, I think a lot of people are kind of in agreement that this free agency class, I don't want to say it sucks, but it's not as good as some other free
Yeah.
agency classes we've seen recently. And then we get some of the Greg Johnson comments about pitching, which is he said the Giants will be very careful about giving a pitcher more than $100 million, which, in the current, baseball economy is kind of crazy because you see like, you're seeing like 3, 4 kind of guys getting like 15 to $20 million average annual value. It's not my money. I mean, I guess in some sense it is because I'm going to the ballpark. I'm spending $20 on a glass of beer or whatever. But at the same time, it's not really my money, so I don't care that much. But I think the important thing is he said that he never said they're not going to do that. He said they're going to be very careful about who they do that with. So I think, we've talked a lot about Imai privately. I think Imai makes probably the most sense from a, youth and a projectability and an upside standpoint, because when you look at a guy like Framber Valdez, I see kind of like a lefty Logan Webb,
Yeah.
who there have been issues with his character, with the thing where he was like purposely crossing up his
Yeah.
catcher. There are
Yep.
issues with, I think he's had some elbow issues, even though he doesn't throw super hard. And, like, do you really want Framber Valdez starting like a playoff game? I think there might be legitimate questions about that. Like, he's kind of maybe more of like a playoff 3, I would think, than like a playoff 2, which is where he'd be in the Giants rotation right now. And are you really willing to give someone like that like $200 million? I don't know, just a legitimate thing of pause versus, Cease, he's kind of his own worst enemy. He's got all the talent in the world. The under the hood numbers are really good, but he just doesn't put it together a lot of the time. And again, is that someone you really want to give over $100 million to? Whereas you get to Tatsuya Imai, and yeah, there are concerns, but I feel like for the contract he's projected to command, I feel like you'd probably feel the best giving him that kind of contract. I don't know. What do you think about that? Like that
Yeah.
decision between those three?
I think Imai and Cease are definitely like the more upside plays, right? Like Valdez, I think gives you a certain level of floor that you feel really good about in the regular season. But as you mentioned, maybe in the postseason, you do want like, I mean, the Dodgers showed it, right? Like you want to throw out like the best of the best. And if you're thinking about competing with, a rotation of Glasnow and Otani and Yamamoto and Snell, like all these guys, you need to have like actual guys that have a really high ceiling. Now with Imai, I do think there's going to be a bidding war for him. I think the price is going to be higher than even like the projections are. That just is how like the market has gone the past few years, and probably even more so this year because, like you mentioned, the class is not that strong. So it wouldn't shock me if Imai got like say 180 plus million, which is a very big commitment, and there is some risk there. He's not a Yamamoto where you can say with I'm 100% certain this guy's going to be an absolute stud. There's a little bit of risk with Imai. They could also hit the trade market, of course, with like Joe Ryan, Freddie Peralta, Kodai Senga is available for the Mets, although he has like the health issues. But Yeah, I mean, personally, again, from a as a Giants fan, but also from like just like an NPB perspective on where I think the best fits would be for Imai. I think he needs an org that has proven like an ability to be pretty good with pitching development slash help guys tinker around. Obviously, Vitello's bringing in his own guys, so there's a little bit of uncertainty there. But the home park's going to help him. Patrick Bailey's going to help him. Like for a guy that has command issues, talk about like needing a great framer like a Patrick Bailey or an Alejandro Kirk. Like obviously, the Giants are, at the top of the list there. So
Yeah.
I think
You
Imai would
you
be a
could
great fit.
you couldn't sneak that, oh, he needs a good framer narrative by me on that one tweet. I was like, oh, I know what Yuri's talking about here. Um, but I mean, something with that is like, I want to talk about two things. But first of all, Vitello has had a pretty good track record developing pitchers at when he was with the Tennessee Volunteers.
Yep.
He obviously developed Garrett Crochet, I believe. Even though Crochet wasn't, drafted as a starting pitcher, I think he skipped the minors entirely. He pulled a
Yeah.
he pulled a, I forget what that one guy, a Mike Leake. He pulled a Mike Leake and skipped the minors entirely, and just went straight into the bullpen. But then you look at guys like Blade Tidwell, I believe was also with Tennessee, and he's
Yeah.
had a lot of success in the minors, and he's obviously very talented. So I think that would be a pretty easy selling point if you're trying to bring in Imai, just being like, okay, we're rebuilding our pitching development with these guys. You can look at our track record at Tennessee. Obviously, did pretty well there. But so that's one thing. Another thing is, like you mentioned, competing with the Dodgers, and not even just competing with the Dodgers, but looking at the division. I think it was like, to me, it's just kind of crazy for some of the hesitancy that Buster and Greg Johnson have sort of displayed recently. Not to say, they could just be under promising and then they're going to over deliver, which,
Yeah.
I wouldn't blame them for that. But, there's also an argument against, like, you don't want to spend money just to spend money, on a free agency class that's not great, when, in a couple of years you'll have better players, or you can acquire better players, like you said, through trades. But I just look at a division where one team is not a serious organization. The Rockies are not going to be a concern for the foreseeable future. Well, I don't know. Maybe Paul DePodesta will change things faster than I expect. But, that's the Rockies. You look at the Diamondbacks, an org that seemingly cannot get a free agent pitcher to stay healthy to save their lives, and has not really been able to put it together with their own pitching development, which has hindered them. Then you look at the San Diego Padres, who have lost, like, actually their entire rotation. Yu Darvish needs a second Tommy John. I don't think it's crazy to say Yu Darvish's career might be over in the United States. We'll see if Unk's still got it in a year plus, but he's out. King and Cease are both walking, and they're not coming back. I don't think there's any way they're coming back, with the Padres looking to sell the team's ownership, looking to sell from the Seidler group to someone else. When that happens, we saw with the Twins, like they're trying to get money off the books. They're trying to reduce financial commitments. They're not bringing in those big free agents. I was joking with Brandon too in DMs. I was like, oh yeah, the Padres, Yu Darvish and AJ Preller really want Tatsuya Imai, but they ain't got Tatsuya Imai money. Kona Takahashi it is, kid. So you have those two organizations who hypothetically you should be able to leapfrog easily. And that just leaves the Dodgers, who are a rapidly aging team. Like, let's not mince words. They're rapidly aging with that core. How long will they still be competitive? I don't know. And then there's all the injury volatility with, the stuff-focused starting rotation, the very stuff-focused bullpen. There's a universe in which things click for the Giants, and they could be right there with the Dodgers this year for the NL West if things go according to plan. But that's we'll see if that happens. But what do you think about, like, trying to leapfrog those other teams in the division? Do you think that's like something that Buster could actually realistically get done this offseason?
I think so. I mean, the Padres, and I guess to a certain extent the Diamondbacks, they have the same goals as the Giants, right? I mean, they've done it in slightly different ways, but everyone's trying to beat the Dodgers. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to in the regular season. You could obviously do so in the playoffs. I mean, the Giants were right there with the Dodgers in 2021, both regular season and postseason. Like if one ball falls another way, then they might have actually won that series. And then we're looking at a very different timeline after 2021. But yeah, I mean, they didn't play well against the Padres this year, but
No.
I do think that when you look at the two rosters, like you could easily make an argument that you would rather take the Giants kind of higher floor roster than the Padres. I mean, the Padres have like the big superstar names, which is something the Giants, again, until Devers have like kind of lacked in recent years. The Padres have like, Tatis, and they gave the big contract to Bogarts, and and even with guys like Darvish, like they've just been able to bring in like these bigger names in recent years. And they had that whole like Slam Diego thing, like basically the whole momentum, and with MLB pushing like the Padres Dodgers rivalry and over the Giants Dodgers rivalry, right? Like everyone was kind of shifting the narrative towards the Padres being like this new force to be reckoned with in the West. But yeah, I mean, I think you could have easily three teams from the NL West make the postseason next year. And, the Giants are obviously, I think if you look at just projections, are probably better suited than the Diamondbacks. And then they're right there with the Padres. But with the right off season, I think they're going to be able to leapfrog them.
Hmm. And speaking of the right off season, you mentioned Imai, but like, what do you have some other moves you like the Giants to make? Are there like specific players you think are really good fits, or you guys you just want to see the org bring in?
I do continue to look at second base as a whole. And again, it's hard to upgrade second base based on this current class. Like the free agent class isn't that cracked out. But Bo Bichette, obviously mostly a shortstop, but we saw him play the Keystone at the World Series. Giants in general need to improve against left-handed pitching. They were terrible against lefties in 2025, and Bichette has a 856 career OPS against lefties, so I think that would help out. Granted, a middle infield of like Adames and Bichette maybe isn't all that great defensively, but others would be like Jorge Polanco. His splits are pretty fine. People have thrown out like trading for Brandon Lau, although his splits against lefties are not very good, so I'm not all that sure about that. And then when it comes to the outfield, they do need to get creative. I think it would be better if Jung-Hoo Lee moved to a corner like Stephen Kwan in Cleveland. We see the kind of value that he can provide defensively if he's in a corner. Like it's tough because Lee doesn't have really the power to be a traditional like wing, but his defensive metrics are just not that great in center. Can he improve though? Absolutely. He's very athletic. We've seen him make all these highlight reel plays, but if they wanted to bring in a better defensive center fielder and then push Lee to one of the corners, I do think that would help them defensively a lot. But if not, then I would actually like to see them kind of move off from Elliot Ramos in left. Like if Lee is in center and Ramos is in left, and then I don't know, like right now, I guess it's like a Gilbert and Luis Matos platoon in right, or I even like think they should get creative with Bryce Eldridge and try him in the outfield a little bit. I don't think they're going to, but just like with Devers and Eldridge, like I don't like when first base and DH are like that cemented. You kind of want that to
Hmm.
be a little bit more flexible. Um, but yeah, an impact bat who is maybe a little bit better defensively than Ramos. And don't get me wrong, I like Ramos, but his second half was just not very great
Yeah.
on either side of the ball. So I wouldn't mind if they moved off of him and tried a little bit of a different outfield alignment.
Yeah, and that's the problem, like you mentioned, like you have these like kind of ideas of like things being set in stone already, because that's kind of how they've been built out. It's like, okay, well, we need like Eldridge, we called Eldridge up. Like he's gonna be starting the year, right? Because they're hoping he wins rookie of the year so they get that extra draft pick, because they've just been so like devastated by signing all these qualifying offer guys. They just don't have enough slices of that early, or those early draft round
Yeah.
like pie slices. So you're hoping he can get you one back, but then it's like, okay, well, if Eldridge is playing the whole year, so we can hopefully get him to win Rookie of the Year, like, is he the DH the whole year? We know that Rafael Devers kind of doesn't want to play DH because he says he works better when he's just like in the field and can, not be in his head all the time, like off the field. But then, like, okay, are we really just gonna say, hey Bryce, go try right field, I guess? Like, pull a, Munetaka Murakami, just stick him in there for like one inning and see what happens, and hope he doesn't hurt himself. Um, and to Lee's point, I'm of the mind that I think he should get one more year in center field, just get one more year removed from his injuries, both in KBO, in the KBO and in Major League Baseball, and hope like some of that, that explosive speed continues to recover, and hope his routes and his I don't want to say his courage, but kind of his courage to make some of those highlight reel plays continues to increase, and he continues to get comfortable, and hopefully you see some of those defensive metrics kind of tick back up. But then, like you said, it's like, okay, if we're actually trying to win, can we really be affording to do that? It's the same problem of like, the Giants front office being like, okay, well, we really believe in these young pitchers. Like, we're really expecting them to take a step forward. It's like, all right, that's great. Landon Root did last year, but like,
Yep.
Can we really be like affording to have that happen, or say that's going to happen, if we're ostensibly trying to compete, which we are, because we have this core that we've locked up for the next like 6 to 7 years. So like, I don't know. These are just tough questions to answer.
And I
And I
think
guess
with Eldridge, right? Like Eldridge is obviously a huge trade chip as well to go after a Freddie Peralta or a Joe Ryan. But, I don't want to trade Eldridge. Like I know a lot of Giants like fan base are kind of, on the fence about this. Like, do you trade Eldridge? Again, that does kind of solve like the Devers issue. But the guy's 20 years old, and I mean the ceiling is so high, and he's, they've had so many like failures with, quote unquote busts like Marco Luciano. They just haven't had a lot of these top prospects pan out. Eldridge, obviously he needs to get it done, but from what we see in double A and triple A and the exit velos and just like his frame, like this guy seems like the real deal. You got to give him a shot. He could turn into kind of like a Nick Kurtz light in terms of like the season that Kurtz just had in Sacramento there. Like, imagine if Eldridge does even like 75% of that, like either next year or the year after. Like, you would feel so terrible about trading him if Eldridge can blossom into kind of like a Bryce Harper level talent. So I would like to keep Eldridge. It's just like the defensive home is going to be tough, and then that does make it more difficult to navigate free agency because with a lot of these like Japanese sluggers, Okamoto and Murakami, I don't think you can really bring them into the fold if Eldridge and Devers and Ramos are like on the same team.
for sure. And I listened to a podcast with Kerry Crowley and Roger Munter, and they brought up a really great point, I think, about Bryce, which is like, this organization has not produced a superstar position player in 15 years. It has not been since Buster Posey that we have gotten a legitimate superstar produced by this farm system. And the second you trade Bryce Eldridge, that clock is reset, and we don't know how long it's going to take to get another crack at that. And for this fan base, I just don't think, even though I guess, he's not Buster's guy, he's Farhan's guy, he's a Farhan draft pick. I just don't think you can do that to this fan base at this point. I don't think that's fair when we're this close, when we're seeing tools this loud in the system, when we've really not seen any loud tools in the system for, a long time to do that. As much as, as tempting as it is to solve some of those positional problems and fortify the rotation with like a Joe Ryan or Tarek Skubal for a year or whatever by trading Eldridge. All right. So unless you have anyone else you want to mention for like off-season targets, I think we could.
I would say, I mean, just bullpen wise, like I don't want to go into the season with Ryan Walker as the closer, right? So
Nah.
you need to bring back Tyler Rogers, be the setup guy, and then if they can secure. I'm not that like confident ever in giving big money to a reliever just because it's so volatile, but I personally like Devin Williams more than like Edwin Diaz just from I think Williams with that like airbender can like age really well. And apart from the first month, he was not bad with the Yankees at all. Dude was
No.
really good. So I think Williams, obviously, if they could bring him in, would be huge.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like, like you said, his under the hood stuff was really good, and then the stuff was really good, even though the results weren't always there with the Yankees. But seeing if there's some way to bring him in on a higher AAV, shorter term deal with like
Yes.
opt outs, maybe,
Yes.
because he gets to ideally he's getting some good development from Vitella's new staff, and he gets to play half his games in Oracle to kind of work on rebuilding some of his value. You would think that would be kind of like a no-brainer kind of move. Um, so like a Tyler Rogers, Devin Williams off season, and then you also have like Joel Peguero who throws absolute gas in the bullpen. Jose Buto looked pretty good, I thought. And then you maybe go out and you just bring in a bunch of NRIs, whomever you can find, and let them compete for the bullpen. R.A. Franson is a free agent. He gives right-handed hitters fits, even though he'll be playing at the World Baseball Classic for sure. Yeah, I just think it's really hard to sell the idea of competing for the division with the bullpen in the state it's in, just leaving it unaddressed. Kind of like you said, even though you do hesitate a little bit to give relievers big
Yeah.
contracts.
And, addressing the bullpen can also mean you just shore up the starting rotation and then you have some of that excess, starters become relievers, right? I mean, that's basically what the Dodgers did in the
Mhm.
postseason. Like their bullpen kind of sucked, but when you have Roki and Glasnow that can throw out of the pen, and then what Yamamoto did, it's just like that kind of solves itself when it comes down to crunch time. In the regular season, though, you do kind of want that solidified like eighth and ninth inning guy.
Yeah, Roki pitching himself back on to Samurai Japan in like 1 month.
Yeah. Yeah, impressive. I gotta give it
Yeah,
to him.
yeah. And maybe that would be like a Hayden Birdsong kind of thing to
Yes.
do, where you just like have Birdsong in, like Kerry Crowley said, the most low leverage of situations as possible, where there's no one on base, clean start to the inning, and you're like, all right, you can issue some walks, but just figure it out, and we'll kind of build up your confidence as the season goes along. And I talked to Brandon too, and he's like a huge fan of Carson Wisenhunt's changeup, and I'm like, out of the rotation, I think he might be legitimately Major League Baseball's first one pitch starting pitcher,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
in the bullpen, you might hope that the fastball ticks up enough to be a two pitch lefty kind of
Yeah.
destroyer maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Are you good moving on to the current NPB postings and NPB free agents that
Yes.
are out there?
Yes, let's do it.
Awesome. So hopefully the people have been following along, but we've got 4 players who have been posted. And we have 1 international free agent, I believe, who is looking to come over. So 5 in total. Outside of like Foster Griffin, Anthony K, John Duplantier. I'm just talking about like the Japanese pitchers in NPB right now. So we've got Tatsuya Imai and Kona Takahashi of the Cebu Lions. Shout out to Cebu for bringing in Slovenian Carlos Tovar to a developmental contract. I thought that was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Kazuma Okamoto of the Yomiuri Giants, the captain, the first position player posted by the Yomiuri Giants, and Munetaka Murakami, of course, of the Yakult Swallows. And then Takahiro Norimoto is an international free agency and is apparently prioritizing overseas offers. I read in like a Japanese article, which I thought was hilarious. But it's not a decade ago, Norimoto. I don't know what you're hoping to do right here, buddy. But yeah, where would you like to start? Which of the free agents would you like to talk about first?
I mean, I'll just hit on Norimoto to start. I don't know why he didn't try earlier, right? Like if you're telling me this guy wants to go over in 2017, I would talk about Norimoto in the same way I'm talking about Imai. Like this guy won the PL strikeout title 5 straight years. It was like a K rate over 25% every year. He had a nasty splitter, but then he moved to the bullpen and he's not that good in that role anymore because he's 34. I know I've read in articles, interviews like, oh, he it's a dream of his to experience like MLB and stuff like that. But it's like, again, maybe he gets a minor league offer if he wants to grind at this age. It'd be admirable, but I don't really foresee much for him, which is why I really haven't talked about him at all. But yeah, I mean, the other four, I mean, mostly three, because I don't really view Kona as like that good of a, talent at this point in time. But there's a lot to like with them. So yeah, I mean, you tell me, who do you want to start with?
Well, I'm just gonna quickly talk about Norimoto. I remember watching like clips of him pitch like when I was in high school, watching him pitch in MPB, watching him pitch in the MLB All Stars versus Samurai Japan series, where
Oh
he
yeah,
was
that's
like,
right.
I think he was like 94 to 97 as a starting pitcher. And people were like, wow, this guy's pretty good. Like if he's posted, like there might be serious interest. And he just wasn't posted. And then now
Yeah.
of all times, he's like, yep, I really want to go over to MLB with my, 92.5 mile per hour average fastball velocity out of the bullpen. And I'm just like, all right, dude, like, I don't know what you're like, I don't understand where you think you possibly fit in an MLB organization. Like just some like the Rockies, like you're just gonna go out there and absorb innings or something. I really don't know. Um, but yeah, I don't even think like do you think he's even gonna get like any serious interest?
I think he's going to do what Alan Curry did last year, where he says he wants to go to MLB, but then ends up, signing with another NPB team as a domestic free agent. I think that makes the most sense for him. Basically, he gets out of Tohoku. Maybe he even gets a chance to start somewhere else. I mean, maybe that's part of it. Maybe he doesn't like that he got moved to the pen. I thought that was a little premature anyway. And maybe Rakuten, like I don't know. Like I don't think they blocked him from being posted. Like that wouldn't really make much sense. But maybe there was some things there where he wanted to go earlier and he didn't really get the chance. Um, Yuki Matsui waited till he was an IFA too, so that's kind of a trend with Rakuten, although they posted like Tanaka before. So I don't think
Yeah.
again, I don't really think they're like anti-posting, but yeah, it's interesting. I think he stays in MPB, just goes somewhere else. If he really wants a minor league deal, though, I mean, given that Koyo Aoyagi got a minor league deal, I think he will get an invite to spring training if he really wants it.
God, I wish Koya Yagi had made the Phillies bullpen. He was like the most Phillies Japanese player of all time, like the most blue collar Japanese, like just junk
Receding
baller,
hairline.
receiving hairline pitcher ever. I wish he made the major leagues with them. That would have been they would have loved him in Philly.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But I guess why don't we just give the people what they want? Let's talk about Munetaka Murakami. So Munetaka Murakami, basically everybody who follows MLB knows who he is. He's maybe one of the most hyped up Japanese players to get posted in history. He's up there with Shohei. He's up there with Yamamoto. He's up there with Tanaka and Darvish. Because quite frankly, his ceiling is like insane. He's got one of the highest ceilings of any power hitter you could find on the planet. He's pretty young. He's 25. He's a left-handed power bat. He's, I guess you could call him a corner infielder. He played third base in MPB. He was drafted as a catcher. He has played game time in the outfield, but realistically, he's a first baseman or a DH. And he's been just all over the place in the past couple of years, and the discourse has been insane and exhausting on English, like speaking baseball Twitter, where everyone loves him, and then everyone's like, actually, he can't hit it above a 93 mile an hour fastball when the sample size was like, I don't know, it was like 20 at bats or
20.
something, or
Yeah.
like the tiny sample size, and they're like, oh, he's terrible. His in zone contact rate is terrible. He strikes out too much. He's never going to find any success in MLB. He's totally washed at 25 years old. And then people are like, wait, no. He is kind of a monster. He was a monster once, and he came back from injury in 2025 and he went absolutely nuts. So like it's looping back around, kind of horseshoe theory to wait, no, he's actually elite.
Yep.
I don't know. I think you had the most reasonable take I've ever seen on Murakami in the English speaking sphere. Which I was like, oh, Cosmo, they're gonna reject your message. It makes too much sense. So why don't you, tell the people kind of where you are at with Murakami at this point?
I love Murakami, one of my favorite players to watch in NPB. Like every single plate appearance with Murakami was going to bring some level of excitement, right? So he has this star power, he has the aura, um, right? But there is like genuine concern for me about how his transition is going to be. I do think you can easily make the argument of like, hey, don't overthink it. He's a 25-year-old with 80 grade power, pretty good plate discipline. He might just show up to MLB and hit 40 homers in his rookie season. That's possible. That's like within his range of outcomes. That's not, you can't say that about a lot of guys.
Mhm.
But there is also this part of me that can already foresee people like making fun of him on Twitter and calling his contract like Anthony Rendon 2.0. And they're gonna like there is a world where Murakami just does not make the adjustments and he just whiffs too much and he ends up being a like barely above average bat. I don't really foresee him being just like completely terrible like a Yoshitomo Tsutsugo. Like some people have said, like his raw power is just way better than Tsutsugo. And even Tsutsugo had like a 1 or 2 month stretch there with the Pirates where he was like
Yeah.
decent. Had like that famous walk off there into the river. So like Tsutsugo had his moments. I just don't think that guy could genuinely not make the adjustment against high velo fastballs, unfortunately. With Murakami, a lot of people have asked me about that like 93 plus mile per hour stat. Like, is this real? Like, how could this possibly be? It's real. Like, yes, he has not hit well against velo, but it's a small sample, as you mentioned. And you know who else sucked against velo in MPB? That would be Shohei Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani's numbers against 93 plus in MPB were worse than Shohei Ohtani, just or worse than Munetaka Murakami. Just gonna put that out there. Like these guys, there are no starters in MPB other than like Imai and Yamamoto and Roki and Shunpeita Yamashita that throw over 95 for one. So you're barely seeing that kind of velo. When you are seeing it, it's like you get one AB against a reliever who's probably like, you know, specifically chosen as your matchup, like a hard lefty. And then of course you're not going to hit it, right? Because it's just
Yeah.
like it's a tough matchup for you. It's like they specifically brought him in to face you and you only get one chance against him. So it's just like, yeah, I mean, kind of that's just like statistically how things are going to go. But I do think Murakami, a lot of his like outlook also depends on the contract he gets. If he gets this kind of projected 160 million over like or more over like 6 or 7 or 8 years, then it's like that already like sets the bar super high for him, right? Whereas like Kylie McDaniel had a much more um realistic, I guess, like more of like a what his like baking in risk with like an 80 to 90 million dollar contract. If he gets that, he's an absolute steal. I just think that there will be some level of bidding war for him, but not in the same way of like Imai. I do think a lot of teams are scared off about him. During the season, I talked to quite a few MLB people in front offices, and basically the first thing they would always say was like 30% strikeout rate in MPB. And then
Yeah.
that's just kind of it. Like that's just like end of story. Like that's not going to translate. It's kind of like the first thought that you come to. So then you dig in deeper and you see his exit velos and you see like his potential. And then teams change their tone a little bit. But
Mhm.
I don't foresee like certain teams are just not going to go after him. I know because he had dinner with Yamamoto, everyone's already decided he's going to the Dodgers. Um, I don't know how he fits into the Dodgers. Like, I'm not going to roll it out because the Dodgers can sign everyone. The Dodgers will figure it out. But how does he fit in with Muncy at third, Freeman at first, Ohtani at DH? You would have to stick him in the outfield, I guess. Or, I mean, even if Muncy was like, Muncy's leaving in 1 year, but like Murakami's not your long-term, guy at the hot corner. So I don't think like the Dodgers make much sense for him. Yankees have been in on him for so long. They have so many scouts at his games, like over the past 3, 4 years. Not sure if that's necessarily a great fit either, especially when I see their fan base always complaining about like these high strikeout rate all or nothing guys. I don't
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
see him get like booed after, a rough start. But in the right environment, I think Murakami can rake.
yeah. And to your point about like the tools and the youth, it's like, okay, you're thinking about this like all or nothing 80 grade power like die like prospect, like, who's putting up these like if putting up insane numbers in the high minors. It's like, okay, you're thinking about like Spencer Joneses, you're thinking about like, those kind of prospects where you're like, people are like hyping these guys up to no end. And, organizations are like, we're not trading this guy. He's too good.
Yep.
So it's like, okay, like they're getting a free pass for the holes in their game with their allowed tools, but you're dismissing Murakami because he's coming from NPB. Although the 70% in zone contact rate is a little bit interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. The
And
the in zone contact is that it's something. It's something.
yeah, but like you said, Shohei came here. He had a huge leg kick. He had like one single off of Bartolo Colon in his first spring training because
Yeah.
he was just completely overmatched against MLB pitching like for a couple weeks until he made some tweaks, and then he became like one of the best hitters in the league basically in his rookie year, or maybe
They
not one of
called
the
him
best,
a yeah, they called him a high school hitter. So
right. Yeah, he's never seen a good curveball before. um and that's players are not static. They can develop, they can regress. You have to, Munetaka Murakami, obviously not quite as athletic as Shohei Ohtani was, to put it politely, but there's no reason you can't think that he can make adjustments.
yeah.
And
And to your point, I said this on Cespedes Family BBQ, but he hasn't had to make adjustments in MPB, right? Like you can't fault the guy for not changing his like swing path over the past 4 or 5 years when his down years are 30 to 35 homers. And then at his peak, he was doing what he did in 2022. And this year, like, yes, he only played in, 50 something games, but I mean the home run pace was just outrageous, despite the strikeouts still not changing. Like that was the disappointing part of the 2 months that we saw of him for me, is that his swing decisions, his swing and miss was still basically exactly the same as 2023, 2024. But the power, the isolated power going back up to like 400, like he was committed, and you can see what this guy can achieve when he's really like driven and being like, I'm just gonna hit tanks. I'm just gonna hit tanks.
yeah, how dare he not prepare for his one matchup of the year with Shunpeita Yamashita, who is healthy for like 20 innings
Yep.
or whatever.
Yep.
Um, but I guess for Murakami, you mentioned you don't see a fit for the Dodgers. The Giants doomer, do see a fit for the Dodgers, because to me, I think I look at the Dodgers roster, I say, okay, this position player roster is respectfully old as fuck. And they
True.
have not shown the ability to develop position players from their farm system in recent years. That might change with a guy like, Emil Morales, who I love, who was born in Spain. That's the only reason I love him as well. I mean, he's a great player. He's very exciting to watch, unfortunately. But I think there's a world where the Dodgers say, okay, Murakami, we have this plan to make you better, a la what we did with Haesung Kim, where maybe you get some time in the minors initially, and you're just going to have to deal with that if you want this plan to work. And then we're going to have you split time between third base and first base and DH, and maybe a little outfield time to give Muncy a break, to give Freddie a break. If Shohei is getting ready for a start and he needs that off day before or after the start, you stick him in a DH. And that's a potential way I could see him fitting the Dodgers. And I nihilistically said I thought he'd be a Dodger, but maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. And like you said, there are plenty of other fits and plenty
Yeah.
of other organizations around the league who I'm sure want him.
Yeah, I can definitely see that plan working. It's just to me, if he makes that decision, it's almost like there's so many other fits where he can just get like everyday playing time like right out the gates. Like it would kind of confuse me as to why he's doing it. Not to say that it's not gonna, it might be a great choice for him long term. Everyone wants to play under Otani. He will make you better. Having that Japanese core already there, you're gonna get like, you know, front page news every day because it's the Dodgers. If that's what he desires, then yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. It's just I think for Murakami in 2026, I would like to see him get consistent ABs at the MLB level, maybe a team that's willing to let him just, hey, you're an everyday first baseman, you're an everyday DH, you're going to hit fifth. Let him struggle out the gates, give him time to adjust, and then I think that's going to allow him to blossom, I guess, the quickest.
Right. And are there any teams you like if you had to pick a team to do that, which team do you think it would be?
Yeah, it's interesting because some of his better fits are probably, I don't know if they have the budget for him. Teams like the Guardians, like they probably don't have the budget for him. I guess the Mariners do, but again, like I'm not sure about their positional flexibility. I guess the Padres, like I always end up saying the Padres, and then I'm wrong because I'm like, hey, the Padres also have Darvish and Matsui. They have like a mini like Japanese core there too. Like a lot of guys want to go there, and plus they're West Coast and they're pretty well known now among Japanese stars. Like Darvish obviously gave all that merch during the WBC, and
Yeah.
everyone was wearing Padres stuff. Um, there's a picture of Imai wearing a Padres thing too, by the way. But yeah, I think like the Padres would kind of make sense. Like and just on a very simplistic level, like replacing Luis Ariz with Munetaka Murakami is kind of a W, but also just like a complete polar opposite profile. So that'd be fun.
Yeah. I think we've talked about Murakami enough. I think we've managed to find like some realistic take on him that
Yeah.
is not too far to one side or the other side. So do you want to talk about Kazuma Okamoto or Tatsuya Imai next?
Yeah, let's talk about Okamoto because I do think Okamoto is going to be compared to Murakami a lot, not least because, same position essentially, both came out of Tokyo teams, both big sluggers. He's older though. That is like a clear downside. Like I know a lot of people, it's kind of hip right now to say they prefer Okamoto
Yes.
long
It's
term.
very it's very hip to say that.
And because I think originally that was kind of almost like a contrarian take, but now it's kind of the mainstream take, which I
Mhm.
get. Like, look, the plate skills with Okamoto are better. He only struck out 11% of the time this year. I mean, that's like insane for a guy with a 211 OPS plus to only be striking out that little, 90% in zone contact. He's more of the plug and play player. Like, I don't foresee him having as rough of a transition. His raw power is nowhere near what Murakami's is, but his ability to consistently put the ball in the air to his pull side, like these are traits that will work in MLB. But another thing I'm seeing is a lot of people are saying that he is like a good defender. At best, he's like fine, maybe pretty good at like on a good day, right? But I think in general, he's not giving you much defensive value, certainly at third or left field. Maybe at first he can be like pretty decent. But I mean, if you look at like defensive runs saved, he wasn't really that good anywhere. He was just good within the context of NPB because these are very defensively weak positions in NPB. And I would say he was well above average in Japan, but I don't think that necessarily means he's going to be great in MLB defensively. With that being said, short-term outlook, I tend to agree that like Okamoto might be better than Murakami in 2026 and 2027, but then he's 33 years old, and as with any 33-year-old like slugger, the value begins to diminish.
Mhm. Right. And to me, I just think, to your point about like, the defensive, the defensive positioning and the value there. To me, I look at, Seiya Suzuki, who's obviously an immediate comp to Kazuma Okamoto. And I
Yep.
just think, hey, Seiya was a more athletic guy who was younger coming over to Major League Baseball. He did not stick in the outfield. he
Yeah.
is not he has not looked great, when he's been in the field. And, Okamoto is older and less athletic. And I'm just like, I don't have a whole lot of hope for him outside of first base. Um, that being said, is he a better left fielder than Elliot Ramos? Probably. But don't trip over that bar on the floor there. But the more I think Okamoto, like, it's not unreasonable of me to say, like, I'm not a betting man, but if I was to bet on Okamoto having a greater than 800 OPS and hitting 20 bombs, how many times would I be right out of 10 after the 2026 season? I feel like at least 7 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
But, you know, I worry a little bit about he's, going into this transition period. When Seiya came over, there was he's taken a while to kind of like really, like, he's always been an above average hitter in the major leagues.
Yep.
I'm not saying he was bad, but there there is a year that we have just seen where he was clearly better than his previous years. And my problem with thinking about Okamoto in that is he's going into his like age 29, 30 year right now. What can you expect out of that first year? Reasonably, hopefully more than an 800 OPS, roughly 20 bombs. But then you hit that age 31 year old season, and we just know it's an objective fact bat speed starts declining once you hit 31 years old. Bat speed isn't everything, obviously. There's ways you can kind of cheat around it and stuff like that. But it's just a thought I had of like, okay, how much are we reasonably expecting him like to get out of that ceiling? Because like you said, the floor is really high, the ceiling might not be there, but that's not to say he's going to be a bad player, not worth whatever contract he gets. I think he's definitely going to be worth whatever contract he gets, from whatever team is willing to give it to him.
And that's a great point about, like, if you're 30, you really don't have the same window of transition that, like, say Suzuki's been afforded, right? Because if you're not good in your first 2 years, you're probably not getting better at 33, 34. So I'm going to be very curious to see like what kind of contract he gets. Like, obviously, if he kind of wants just like, I just want one deal in MLB and then I'm willing to go back home, then like a 5-year deal would be perfect. Like, he's going to be 35 and then he heads back to Japan. Like, I don't foresee him getting another deal after that. If he wanted to take like a 2-year deal, he probably could propel that into like a second MLB payday. But yeah, I think Okamoto, I'm most interested to see like how his approach evolves. Like, if he sells out for power and he say strikes out 25% of the time in MLB, he probably is gonna have like kind of a say a Suzuki type season, right? Where he maybe only hits 240 and the on base isn't super high, but he does get to the slug, which I think that's what he's being paid for. But with the hit tool, I genuinely think like Okamoto's shown like a very high level of bat to ball over the past 3 years in particular, but even like throughout his entire career, he never really has struck out more than 20% of the time. So if he wants to be a little bit more quote unquote well-rounded, maybe have more of like a Gleyber Torres type of a profile. I know Lance Brazowski's made that comp. I think that could work for him as well. His production could come in different shapes, whereas with Murakami, it's very one-dimensional. With Murakami, it's pure 3 true outcomes. With Okamoto, I can see it going like a number of different directions.
Yeah. And I think he just seems like, he was the captain of the Yomiuri Giants. So he was basically Aaron Judge for NPB. I think there is a level of professionalism and just very intangible things, but a level of professionalism and baseline expectation for himself that I think will be reflected in how he plays and kind of what people think of him like in the clubhouse. And he is kind of a funny guy, if you like you mentioned in one of your videos. Like, I follow him on Instagram. His picture of him with his dog is like one of the funniest photos I've
Yeah.
ever
He's a
seen.
weird dude. Weird in like a good way, you know.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm really interested to see what kind of deal he gets in the end and where he winds up going because I saw some projected deal that what was it? It was like 4 years, $30 million or something like that. I was like, Yomiuri like is one of the biggest like news corporations in Japan. They could pay him that if that's
Yeah.
what he was getting, right?
They're gonna be so pissed if that's like the deal he ends up getting and the posting fees like next to nothing. Like they are not posting him for that. Like, yeah, Okamoto is probably gonna get doubled that if I had to guess.
Right. And if you had to guess, where do you see him fitting in? Like, what team do you think really needs him?
Honestly, I think a lot of fits for him. Both the New York teams are certainly going to be in on him. I mean, Boston, Seattle, San Diego again. Um, maybe Houston. Like I think the Crawford boxes there would be a great place to hit. And I made the comp to Christian Walker. I actually think he will be better than Christian Walker in 2026. So that would be kind
Mhm.
of a good way to embed himself as well. But yeah, I think with Okamoto, there are more suitors in MLB, not least because the contract isn't going to exceed what half the teams in the league are capable of. I genuinely think he is within the price range for a lot of different MLB teams. I do think he needs to go to a contender though.
Mhm.
I saw I think Anthony Castrovince had him going to Pittsburgh because I know the Pirates are saying they're going to spend more money this offseason. And hey, I mean, get Paul Skeens that run support. I get it, but I don't think that like he shouldn't be the focal point of a lineup. I think if he is protected. He has, the complementary pieces there. I think he will fit really well. Like he's going to fit like a glove into the 5-6 hole in a lineup.
Yeah, I can't imagine the captain of the Yomiuri Giants being like, actually, PNC Park, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That sounds pretty good. I don't think
Yeah,
he would do
I
that,
don't see
but
that either.
um,
You never know
but
though. You never know.
yeah, he's very, very plug and play, and like any contending team will just be able to be like, all right, well, here's where you're gonna play. You're slotting into the middle of the lineup. Let's go have some fun. Um, and with Okamoto out of the way, I think it's time to talk about Tatsuya Imai.
Yeah, let's talk about Tatsuya Imai.
First of all, I have to say, the people saying Tatsuya Imai is 5'11" and 150 pounds, do they just not have eyes? Like maybe he was 150 pounds
Yeah.
when he was drafted,
Is that
but
what he's listed on and like on Baseball Reference? Is that
yes,
okay?
I
Because
think I believe
because
so.
like
Yeah.
I've been hearing that a lot too, and I'm like, he's bigger than Yamamoto, right? Like, why are we talking about this? I mean, again, I know like short righties, they don't necessarily have, if you look historically at MLB, like guys like Tim Lincecum or Marcus Stroman, like they don't have long careers. I get that that's like from a body slash frame perspective. I get that's an issue, but Imai's like not a small guy,
No.
certainly.
No, he's like you look at him, you're like, this guy's like almost 200 pounds. Like there's no
Yeah,
like there's no way this guy weighs anything less than like 190 or whatever.
yeah, yeah,
Um, so he's got some of the best flow you'll ever see, and the projected contract numbers have been like, $150 million, 6 year, 5, 6 something years like that. But like you said, you expect him to get, you expect a bidding war to kind of raise that price. And I totally agree with you. We even saw it with Yamamoto where they're like, $200 million, I
yeah.
guess, or whatever. And then it's like, oh wait, he's actually 300 million. Like $300 million is like the minimum. Oh, okay. Um, so I'm interested to
Yeah.
see what his final
I think
contract.
Yamamoto changed the precedent like forever in that it proved a guy can get over 300 million without throwing a pitch in MLB. Like, I'm sorry, Josh Reddick, but that's going to happen in the modern game because you don't assess guys based on, what they've done. You're assessing them based on what they can do. And Yamamoto obviously showed what he can do over these past 2 years, especially in the postseason. But yeah, with Imai, I feel like he's one of these guys that the more people look at him, the more people are like warming up to him. Like when I was writing about him midway through the season and I wasn't sure he was being posted. In fact, I heard from several sources that Seibu was thinking of posting Kona, but not Imai. But I just think he had such an amazing year that the financial return became too lucrative for them to not post him essentially for a smaller market team like Seibu. But yeah, with Imai, because from his arm angle and his arm slot and his velocity, you can make kind of these like Joe Ryan type comps, or at least Luis Castillo. Like, given his age, given the fact that he's proven to be at least a little bit more durable than Kodai Senga, because Senga, it's not just MLB. Senga's always had something, like every single year of his career, basically dating back to Japan. Now, Imai hasn't been eating like 200 innings a year. That's certainly true. Like he's been like 160 innings, but I think he will fit in to a lot of MLB teams, maybe with a little bit more depth. Like you got to probably skip him a start every now and then just to make sure he doesn't get super fatigued throughout the long season, especially if they're doing 5-man rotation. But yeah, I'm like increasingly high on Imai's chances, and I'm happy about that because he's a guy I really like as well.
Yeah, I feel like Seibu has to know that there's probably going to be a lockout. And they were like, okay, look, we're going to need to find some innings like Bo Takahashi. We're putting you back in the rotation, buddy, because we need to cover some innings now. But like, they must have been like, we need to cash out now because if we don't, and the lockout just torpedoes MLB, like, in my, God forbid he has a Kona Takahashi moment and almost completely falls off a cliff, then, all your values out the window.
Yeah.
I feel like that had to have been part of it. But I think it's interesting that there is kind of like this really, the public perception is very positive, but when you ask people in MLB and you look and I talked to Brandon too, like there is more of a diversity of opinions where Brandon too is like, okay, definitely a 4. He's probably a 3 and he might be a 2, but I'm not really sure where exactly I would put him because of, legitimate concerns with command and moving to a slicker ball. And you have some MLB front offices being like, oh, we really like him. And then other ones being like, we're not so sure. But, I just think that like a guy, I don't work for like SIS baseball. I'm not an expert. I don't do pitch design, but I just think when you have a guy who sits 95.5 to 96 kind of in that range with a diabolical slider to right-handed hitters who literally just throws 2 pitches to right-handed hitters, and then he's just kind of figuring out versus left-handed hitters, like I think he's going to find success in Major League Baseball with that power fastball slider combo. Coming at him with, even though people talk about the dead zone fastball, it's like not actually dead zone because, the arm angle plus the release height and spin stuff kind of changes that. But, there's a lot to like kind of in this last season he had in NPB.
And I do want to maybe not question, but push back a little bit against what David McKinnon, former teammate of his on Seibu and also friend of Yakyu Cosmopolitan, shout out to David, but he says that in terms of location, Yamamoto is better than Imai, but in terms of stuff, he says Imai is better than Yamamoto. And I'm not saying this as a negative of Imai. I'm just saying this is like, let's not forget how good Yamamoto is. Yamamoto has like 5-6 pitches and like 4 of them are plus. I don't think Imai has that. Imai's arsenal is very shallow. Yes, his fastball from that slot is going to play, but the shape is bad. I mean, the shape is straight up dead zone, basically. And I mean, it might go down to say like 12.5 inches of vert with an MLB ball, whereas it's like 13.5 in NPB. Now that's as an outlier pitch, that's probably going to work for him. Is running it into righties and away from lefties, but there is like genuine concern, like how is that going to translate against opposite hand hitters? The slider is awesome because it's so unorthodox. It has the arm side movement backwards, kind of reverse shape. Again, super unique, almost like a Trey Savage / Luis Castillo, but That is, I've seen some reports slash like analysis from MLB people saying they think he can throw that even more to lefties, kind of, I guess, backdoor for called strikes or back footing it for whiffs. Like he might actually be able to use it to lefties more than I'm like initially anticipating because it's so unique. It almost doesn't function like a traditional slider. It barely sweeps. You almost use it like as like a splitter almost. So
Mhm.
I can see that working for him, but I do have genuine concerns about like the changeup, the splitter. Changeup shape isn't all that great. Like I know it got really good ground ball rate for him this year, and that's why he started using it a lot more. He was locating it better. The splitter, a lot of people are high on as well, which I mean, everyone throws a splitter in NPB, right? So that makes
Right.
sense. But his splitter is like nowhere near what, like, say again, like a Yamamoto or a Sasaki or a Senga. Like he does not have a splitter like that.
Mhm.
And then he started throwing this Vulcan, which he calls the sinker, late in the year. And that got some pretty good results for him, but he really only threw it in game like 5 starts or so. So
Yeah.
to me, there is like the question of how is he going to survive against lefties? With righties, I don't really foresee a problem. I think he's going to dominate. But if a lineup completely platoons and matches up against him and just stacks like all these cracked lefties, and he is going to face a lot of like really good ones that can hit the ball over the fence against him in MLB, there's probably going to be an adjustment period, especially because I don't think his command is good enough necessarily to just like mix and match and pinpoint his way through an outing. He really needs to be able to power up, and that might just mean like improving his changeup a little bit more to the or adding a pitch like a true sinker, like a two seam, something like that might actually get him over the line, and then he might just be smooth sailing from there. But I do think he needs to make slight changes to who he is now if he wants to have long-term success.
Mhm. And that's obviously, not even talking about going from the 6-man NPB rotation to a MLB 5-man rotation. And talking about Imai's fit on the Giants, like we barely have we barely have a 5-man rotation.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'd get to a 6-man rotation for him, or we'd just be like, all right, man, we're paying you this much. We kind of need you to gut your way through this a little bit. Um, but I think, you know, he was like the second best in terms of call strike whiff percent in NPB amongst starting pitchers in 2025, which is pretty sick. I think like 40% CSW on the slider or something crazy like that. And when I think about like a unique kind of slider like pitch from a righty thrown to lefties, I kind of think a little bit of a not Chase Burns, a uh I'm blanking on his name. The Diamondbacks pitcher whose arm exploded.
Oh, Corbin Burns.
Corbin Burns, not Chase Burns. Corbin Burns, how he'll throw his like cutter back door
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
lefties, and that works out for him pretty well. So I'm definitely interested to see what he does with that.
Yeah.
In terms of best fits, Giants. I don't think there's a more obvious best fit for Tatsuya Imai. It's West Coast. He's sort of kind of hinted that he wants to, not be with Otani, but like face him.
Yep.
I don't know how much stock you put into that, but West Coast, you've got that. The Giants have a lot of money to spend. It's a big market. He's not going to be in any danger of being sent to the minors. He is gonna be in the rotation in the major leagues for the Giants. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on potential fits for Imai.
Yeah, I mean, I think all the names that you have written down here, Giants, Blue Jays, Padres, Phillies, Mets, like these are like again, much like Okamoto, I do think he can fit into a lot of different rotations. And he kind of has that dog in him, right? Like I think he's going to be up for the challenge. I think if they tell him, we need you to be our number two, can you get it done on a 5-man rotation from opening day until the end of the season? He's going to say, yes, I can, and he's going to like again, there will be weeks where he might not be viable. Like that's a genuine concern. He might do the Kodai Senga thing where he needs not an assignment to the minors, but again, you might have to skip a start because it's like, oh, he walked 6 guys in his last start. That's not very good. Like we need to, give him a rest a little bit. But this guy's also going to have starts where he strikes out 10 or 11 batters across 5, 6 innings. Like he's going to have these super dominant outings. And I do think with the walk rate, like you can walk guys as long as you're not giving up like the long ball, right? Or you're, gearing up with runners in scoring position. And he really did that in NPB. Now, another thing to mention with him is in NPB against bottom of the order hitters, he was going down to like 91, 92 miles per hour. He's not going to be doing that in MLB. It's going to be pure like keep up the gas as long as you can, 96 plus, which is going to, I think, shorten his outings a little bit. I don't foresee him being like a 7, 8 inning guy like Yamamoto can do. He's probably out the gates more like a 5, 6 inning guy, which is totally fine, right? Like that is very normal for like the vast majority of MLB pitchers these days to go just 2 times through the order, maybe 2.5.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Do you have anything else you want to say on Tatsuya Imai?
Not really, but I mean I mean we can move on to his teammate, his good friend Kona Takahashi.
Yeah, man, Kona Takahashi, I don't know how much you want to talk about him because I really don't, I don't want to say I don't know what to make of him, but I'm kind of just like, I guess he's gonna get like some kind of maybe like NRI to spring training or something, and hopefully it's with like some pitching like focused organization who can kind of work with him to you know tweak his mix and his shapes and that kind of thing, and maybe get him throwing a bit harder on average, because he wasn't really that good in 2025 in NPB.
Yeah, he had a pretty rough year despite, surface level like a 3.04 ERA, but it's below average by ERA plus. Got to keep that in mind. But it was better than 2024 when he went 0-11 with an ERA approaching 4. Um, and with Kona, I will say like his fastball shape has never been great, but it was better before because he kind of had that like you know, run action to it, almost like a sinker. And that was getting him a lot of grounders. Whereas he went to driveline, and yes, he was able to add a few ticks of velo, but I think he was unable to really get the most out of like the vert he was chasing. I think if he was able to add a few more inches there, then maybe his fastball would actually be like average, but he wasn't quite able to get there. So instead, what he ended up with was like a dead zone. And yeah, it had a 21% CSW rate this year in MPB, which is really terrible. The whiff rate
Yeah.
versus lefties was like 5 or 6%. So the fastball was not viable for him. That being said, I like the splitter. And then he kind of has a slower slider as well as like a slurve. Like there are definitely things to like. He has a deep mix and he has continuously shown he wants to pitch in MLB. He's been saying this for like the last 3 or 4 years. Seibu denied him twice, and then I think last year or something he said publicly like, "Oh, I'm not focused on MLB at all anymore. I'm just going to be, looking at the near future." But I know behind the scenes this guy has always wanted to pitch in MLB. And I'm
Mm.
sure it was very demotivating for him to get denied the posting request so many times despite having a great year. And then now it's almost like, oh, you're going to become a domestic free agent, so now you can go. Like it's a little unfortunate timing for him because his value has absolutely tanked. But he has been a workhorse. I mean, he's been up to, Brandon talks about this a lot. He's been up to like 97 miles per hour on the 125th pitch of a game. Like he has that in him. He kind of has that bulldog mentality. And if you're looking at guys to give like minor league offers to, would you rather take like a guy that's is only going to be a 1 inning middle reliever who only has 1 or 2 pitches that are like even decent? Or would you rather take a shot on maybe a project like Kona who has a much deeper arsenal? He's proven an ability to go like 175 innings per year. And if you make the right tweaks to him, and we have seen guys like take big jumps out of nowhere, right? Like then this guy could be a number 5 in your rotation. This guy could be Kai Wei Tang for another team, right? So, you know, I think there's a chance that Kona gets kind of like the Shinosuke Ogasawara deal, like a 2 year, 5 million or something like that, which for him would be good. Or maybe he does the Uwasawa thing. Maybe he goes to his destination of choice, maybe he goes to a good pitching development team like Tampa or Milwaukee or the Mets or something on a minor league deal, and then tries to figure it out there in AAA all year.
Yeah. I think to me, he feels a little bit like a Brewer. I could see him in a Brewers uniform.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's tough, but like you said, there's stuff that you could see working in the major league with the right tweaks, and development's non-linear. We've seen, like you said, plenty of guys who kind of just fix one or two things, and suddenly they're contributing major league players for multiple years. So I think that he'll definitely be getting interest around the league, and I'm interested to see where he winds up going.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to talk about any of the potential foreign players in NPB who could be returning to
Yeah, sure. Why not?
MLB?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can hit on Griffin and Kay and Duplantier. I haven't watched much of Cody Ponce in 2025, obviously, because he was in KBO, but obviously he had 3 years in MPB, and he took a huge leap forward in the KBO. So again, much like what we just said with Kona, it is possible for these guys to kind of just boom, and it starts working out of nowhere, because Cody Ponce was not very good in MPB, especially towards the end. And then he set the KBO single season strikeout record, which maybe says a little bit about like their level of competition, but also I think it says a lot about how he grew as a pitcher with that kick change and uptick in velo.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing I see maybe with like KBO, like pitchers going to KBO. I feel like there's maybe more tinkering with some of them than you see maybe with players who go to MPB. I mean, maybe I'm just talking out my rear end here, but like it feels like it's always like, oh, I added velo and I added this specific pitch, which I'm using as a weapon now. Whereas in MPB, it kind of feels a lot like, well, my career kind of didn't work out in MLB, but like I'm pretty good, so like I think I'm pretty good, so I'm just gonna go and see
Yeah,
what I can
and
do.
I've talked to some of my Korean sources about this, but there are differences in like the pitchers that a KBO team and an MPB team targets, right? Because KBO, based on their roster rules, it's
Yeah.
very important that they stay healthy. If they get hurt, then it's kind of like that's a dud contract. Whereas in MPB, you can roster like 8 or 9 foreigners and just move them down between the farms. So you can take a bigger risk on like, say, a pure stuff guy that has injury concern or command issue, and be like, okay, this guy didn't work out. Think maybe like an Anueris Zavala for the Nippon Ham Fighters. It's like he throws 100 but has the command issues. But it's like, okay, we'll try him out in the top team a little bit. If it doesn't work, he can just be on the farm. I don't think KBO has that luxury. So you have to maybe go for guys who are a bit more durable and flexible with what they can become as a starting pitcher.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't want to be dismissive of what Cody Ponce did, but like I like to make the joke where I'm like, okay, Sam Robertson would probably be the best pitcher in KBO if once assuming he was 100% healthy, which he blew his arm out this year. But like if he was 100% healthy and he went to KBO, I have pretty high faith that Sam Robertson would be one of the better pitchers in KBO. That being said, Cody Ponce is married. No, George Kittle is married to Cody Ponce's sister. So
That's right.
Obviously, already some ties to the Giants there. Buster has kind of shown, I don't want to say like Buster has shown himself to be very player oriented. He was very supportive of certain minor leaguers going to the WBC who like, I was kind of like, okay, well, I'm glad he's letting them go, but like it's kind of interesting that he was letting like these players go to the WBC.
W Buster.
Yeah, W Buster. Yeah, I mean he played it. He got struck. He got blown away by Kodai Senga. He was probably like, yeah, this is great.
Yeah, 2017 WBC. That's right.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean John Duplantier, French name, was pretty impressive at times for Hanshin. But I don't really think he's gonna come back over this year. I feel like he's going to give it another year and see if he can build his
Yeah,
value
I'm
up.
I'm thinking Duplantier stays in Japan, whereas the other two probably go back to MLB because on a per inning basis, John Duplantier was arguably the best starter in NPB. Like we talk about Imai having a 28% strikeout rate and like a 31 CSW. Duplantier was like 32% K rate, and the CSW was, like 2% better as well. Like this guy was just absolutely nuts with Hanshin. I think they did a really good job with his arsenal. He had a bunch of plus pitches, has that like harder sweeper that you don't really see in MPB. So I think a lot of hitters, it took them a long time to get used to seeing that. But then he had the injury in August, and then he came back in the Japan series and wasn't good. So, another year with Hanchin would make sense, or, I know SoftBank wants to get their hands on him, obviously. That would be
Mhm.
good. But yeah, I think Griffin, I'm actually very high on Griffin myself. I've been advocating for Griffin to return to MLB for several seasons now as a candidate.
Mhm.
I might be like higher than Griffin than almost anyone. This guy is like the kitchen sink master. He has such a great ability to throw to both sides of the plate, manage the splits. The sweeper he added is great. The changeup to righties, get some ground balls and get some whiffs. I think his locations have improved. Like he's 50 or 55 grade command. I think he can mix and match his way to being a number five in MLB. I don't know about like how much, swing and miss he's going to get. Like maybe the K rate's a little bit lower. It's like in the lower 20% range, but I think he's going to keep the walks down. I think he's going to keep the home runs down. And I think he can be somewhat viable as like, we've seen it with Nick Martinez, or we've seen it with, um, guys going back. Miles Michaelis, I know he's not good anymore, but once upon a time was.
He's a Chad innings eater now.
He is a Chad innings eater now, right? And Griffin's probably not a Chad innings eater because
No.
he's had injuries, but yeah, like the Nick Martinez role, like a swingman slash like a get spot starts and then give you like 3 innings out of the pen. I think he could do that. K, good, great ground ball pitcher. Also a friend of Yakyu Cosmopolitan, so always repping Mr. Anthony K.
Yeah, I love Nick Martinez. I think he was always like very underrated. I remember him pitching in the Olympics and being like, "Oh yeah, this guy's, he was pitching in MPB. I can see there's some arm talent here." Um, so I'd be interested to see where they find homes in MLB if they decide
Yeah.
if they're posted and
And
come back and
and
whatnot.
Martinez kind of had the Ponce path a little bit where he started with the fighters, wasn't very good, then went to SoftBank. So a little bit different in that he didn't go to KBO, but he went to SoftBank and then he became like elite. Like he was like the number two or number three starter in the league in 2020 or whatever his last season was. So yeah,
Yeah,
like he's been pretty solid for Cincinnati.
he joined the dark side, like Joe Sisu might here coming up.
Yep.
I don't know if you saw my joke tweet about that. I
Yeah.
retweeted. Yeah. Brandon was like, "Oh man, that's kind of a crazy thing to tweet." I was like, "Yeah, I was a little out of pocket with that one." Um, but why don't we start getting into I don't want to keep you here too much longer. Hitting some of the future MPB players we could see posted or
Oh
become
yeah.
IFAs and come over here and talk about some of those guys like who we're excited for, who we think could find success, that kind of thing. And why don't we start with the Sawamura Award winner, which was great vindication for all believers of one Mr. Hiromi Itoh. Let's eat fucking go, as I like to say, because he finally won the Sawamura Award. He was a workhorse in 2025. It was just wonderful to see. I love Hiromi Itoh so dearly. I have his jersey. I'm so happy for him.
Yeah, it's not Itover anymore. It
It's
is
not
it is
Itoh for
yeah,
anymore.
Ito won Sawamura. I said this before that I think he's like a good horseshoe theory for Sawamura of like the sabermetric people and the traditionalists maybe agreeing because the ERA wasn't great for him relative to the rest of the competition. It was like 2.5, as opposed to a lot of guys had like a sub 2. But we like Chad innings eaters, right? And his
Yeah.
underlying under the hood numbers were awesome as well. Great strikeout rate, never walks anybody. So yeah, I mean Ito very deserving, I think. And as long as he doesn't have like an injury, I think he is on track to get posted maybe, within the next 2 years or so. He is from Hokkaido, so I know it's very important to him to stay within that community and continue to give back. But I've described him as Yu Darvish's protege. I know they like to talk to each other a lot. Like, I mean, this guy throws like 13 different pitches. I mean, Brandon can lay out all those for you much better, but um, he added like a kick change this past offseason too, right? So you can tell he's kind of hip to whatever's trending over in the States as well. But yeah, I mean, he has like a very set game plan going into the game. Like he thinks about um, matchups and sequencing at a very high level, I think. And the fighters have been really one of the most sabermetrically inclined teams, I think, in recent years. They're also just ahead of the curve when it comes to like pitch design and pushing like induced vertical break. So Itoh had the like among the best, highest rated fastballs in all of NPB this year, not just like relievers, like
Yeah.
even starters. So I mean, the vert he gets on it, he sits like 93, 94. I think Itoh down the line, you're looking at like a Yu Darvish light in Major League
Mhm.
Baseball.
Yeah, that's something I would love. I just think is so fascinating about Ito is he throws the kitchen sink, but the fundamentals of like he has a good fastball that he can locate is good. And I'm not the biggest fan of Eno Saris, but he makes good points sometimes. And one of the things I think he said that really I agree with is the biggest indicator of success in Major League Baseball is do you have an above average fastball that you can like you have above average fastball and you can locate it. And that's what Hiromi Ito can do, even though he has, like you said, 13 other pitches and variations that he can tinker around and play with. I wrote on the document he's the Yu Darvish of Gen Z.
Yeah,
um,
yeah, that's a great way to put it.
and he threw almost 200 innings this year, which is insane. Like he's not like the biggest guy in the world. Like you kind of look at him and you're like, he's kind of a little bit lanky, but he eats innings. He's going to be able to find success with his arsenal, just like refining shapes and working with pitching coaches in Major League Baseball and finding out what's going to work. And, like you said, being cerebral about matchups. I have the highest confidence that Hiromi Ito will be successful in Major League Baseball whenever he's posted. And I dearly hope he would consider coming to the San Francisco Giants because we would love him for his silliness of falling down on the mound after getting hit by a comebacker or whatever.
Yes, yes, I think that would be fun. And yeah, I mean, hopefully he gets over to MLB while Darvish is still playing, because I think if we got to see them face off in a matchup, that would be super cool.
Yeah.
If Darvish is still, arm is still there.
Yeah, I have a feeling that Yu Darvish is gonna just kind of wait around to see if he can, stick around until one of his sons is like drafted or something,
Yes.
and see if they can play in a game together, and then he'll call it a day or
Yeah.
whatever.
His son's good. His son is good. Going to
Yeah,
San Diego
yeah,
State.
yep. Why don't we talk about Kaima Taira next? Who, my God, is there a player I want? Is there no player I want in the San Francisco Giants uniform more than Kaima Taira? Because I think the Bay Area would absolutely love King Kaima. Um, Kamatira is a fascinating pitcher. He's from Okinawa, ethnically Okinawan. He is, I guess, on the shorter side and on the wider side, to put it respectfully. Just a hilarious build. And he is been both an elite relief pitcher who I believe set the you know, consecutive appearances without allowing a run streak. I think they were calling him like Mr. Zero or something like that when he did that.
That's
Um,
right.
and he's also been a fantastically good starting pitcher.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
And
guess I know you love him as much as I do, but
moving back to the rotation in 2026. A little unfortunate he got moved back to the pen in the first place. He was pretty adamant about the fact that he wants to start last year, but because he had been injured in 2024 and the team really didn't have much in the way of relief. They were like, come on, we need you in the ninth inning. And he agreed, and he was awesome, tied for the PL lead in saves. But Brandon and I have talked about how this guy was doing a little bit of like a silent protest by throwing 7 different pitches as a reliever, which you just don't see, obviously. Usually you want to kind of crunch that down to like 2 or 3 of your best pitches, but this guy was throwing everything, clearly still, um, maintaining that ability to throw multiple innings if he were to be asked to do it. And I think with Kaima Taira, we're going to see in 2026 again what he's capable of as a starter. He was so good in his first year converting that I was a little bit afraid that we would never be able to see that version of him again. But yeah, I think with his short height, he makes the most of that vertical approach angle. Again, very cerebral guy, and multiple great secondaries there in that splitter and the sweeper, cutter. And I think the team that lands Imai will kind of have the inside edge on potentially recruiting him.
Mm-hmm. And I guess, unfortunately, the timing might work out where we get a lockout and we have to wait for after that
Yep.
to see him get posted, which would, obviously it's unfortunate, but it kind of is what it is at this point. But yeah, I love King Kaima. That Kaima Taira versus Tom DeBlock matchup was just I was so happy that they made that happen, because I was like, these are just like two really wide dudes pitching in this game.
Yeah. I very much enjoyed. I was at that game. That was very fun.
Yeah. All right. I have a bunch of other names here. I'm happy just to kind of pick and choose here, because we've been doing at this for a while, and I don't want to keep you too much longer. Who of these names here do you want to talk about next?
I think Shunpeita Yamashita is the guy with the highest upside. I've talked to a lot of people, and they always say the number one talent right now in NPB is Shunpeita Yamashita, and I think for good reason. His only problem is health. Has
Mhm.
those scary, lingering lumbar issues that have, made him miss so much time. This year, he did not make his first start until September. But in the small sample, I mean, he had like close to a 40% strikeout rate as a starter. I mean, he sits 96 plus, gets it up to 99. The splitter and the curveball are both disgusting. Super north-south pitcher, obviously. He probably does need to have like a cutter, or like, I don't know if he can get to a sweeper from that slot, but if he can, then that's going to make him really well-rounded. Another guy that has slight command issues at times, like we saw him in early part of 2024 do the Blake Snell thing, where he was just like never throwing a first pitch strike, always falling behind, and then a guy would like sit on one of his pitches and just like beat him that way. But when he is on, there's no doubt in my mind that Shunpeita Yamashita is a world-class pitcher. Whereas number 11, his build kind of reminds me of Shohei Ohtani in some ways. Like, Yamashita is the most Shohei Ohtani-esque pitcher right now. And I think it's going to be a long time, because he's super young, only 22, like for him to get to MLB. But, let's say in 2029, 2030, I think we're going to be here again talking about Shunpeita Yamashita as kind of like the best pitcher to go over since Roki or Yamamoto.
Yeah, I just watching him pitch, like when he's on, it's like I have no other word to describe him other than diabolical. It's just straight diabolical stuff. And I heard, I can't remember exactly where I saw, but I saw something that like Dodgers scouts were already like watching him, and I was like, oh geez. I don't know how true that is, but you know, I'm sure I hope he is able to be there for the World Baseball Classic, because he'll
Yeah,
just be.
I would be so disappointed if he's not there. I mean, barring health, of course. If he's 100% healthy and ready to go, it would be a huge mistake for them not to pick him for the WBC.
For sure. Yeah. And there's I just love when you get fans being like, "Oh my God, who is this guy?" When like you see like,
Dude,
I don't know.
the Reddit threads on him are going to go insane if he's in the WBC and throws like 99 and just dominates like for 2 innings against USA in the final.
Yeah, yeah. It's gonna be great. I don't know if Samurai Japan is gonna make it there because Dave Roberts is gonna try to block Shohei and everyone, so they might be cooked. Um, a guy for me who I enjoy watching is Hiroya Miyagi of the Oryx Buffaloes, because he's just such a like his build and his delivery and release are all kind of just he's a short guy, and he releases the ball low. He doesn't throw that hard. He's not like Shota Imanaga, where it's oh, he's kind of scraping 90. He throws a bit harder than that, but there's just something mesmerizing about how he pitches. And that three, I just go back to that three pitch sequence to Merrick Loop, which was just the most disgusting three pitch sequence of all time, maybe, where it was Ephus for a called strike, splitter, fork ball down and in for a swinging strike, and then a fastball on the black to strike him out. He's a guy I would love to see try, face major leaguers and maybe give it a go in Major League Baseball, because he is a little bit kind of different. He's not like a power lefty, but he's not I don't want to call Shota Imanaga a gimmick, but he's not that kind of. He's not quite that, but he's also not like a power lefty. So he's just really interesting to me.
Very unique indeed, and I think he complements really well with his teammate Yamashita, because as I mentioned, Yamashita is so north-south, and then Miyagi's completely east-west. If you actually mirror his mechanics, he basically throws like Tatsuya Imai. If you invert lefty to righty, his slot and the way he throws is very similar to Imai. But I will say with Imai, or with Miyagi rather, his command is maybe the best in NPB. I mean, this guy's glove side command, just absolutely painting fastballs on the black. It makes his fastball play up relative to the velocity, because I mean it's mostly low 90s, but it still is grades out as a very good pitch. He kills lefties with that sweeper. So again, similar to Imai in the sense that against same-handed hitters, he just has no problems. And then against righties, I mean, he has the splitter that's just diabolical as well. So he's a guy that has a pretty deep mix. I think he knows exactly what he needs to do to get outs. And with him and Hiromi Itoh and Shoki Murakami, these guys, they all are ethos enjoyers. So that gets plus points as well. That just shows you, and they always use it in the right spot, right? So that's almost low key a way to tell if a guy's a good sequencer / he has a good read on the hitter, knows exactly when to throw that in there and freeze him up.
Right. Mm-hmm. Your point about the glove side fastball command, I think too, the Baseball 100, a fantastic book. And in this, the chapter on Fergie Jenkins mentions, regardless of what happens on the last pitch, the next one is going to be low and away. And that's what his entire career was based on. And I think there's just something so beautiful and effective about just being able to, put a fastball low and away to a hitter and just, make them reach for it, and make them try to beat you.
Best CSW rate among qualifiers in NPB this year, by the way. The only guy who was better than Tatsuya Imai.
Yep. All right. Now let's finish it off with a couple wild card guys. First of all, there's two Cuban pitchers in NPB who have gotten a lot of attention. It's hard to talk about them because one of them plays on a team that doesn't post players, and then he'd also need to defect probably. And then one of them recently or just moved to a team that generally basically doesn't post anyone either. In Raidel Martínez, the reliever for the Yomiuri Giants, and Liván Moinelo, the newly minted SoftBank Hawk ace, I guess.
Yeah, both of them, if they were to go to MLB, I mean, the upside is insane. I don't think we're going to see it because, as you mentioned, they're Cuban. They would have to defect. They haven't shown a want to do that when they're Cuban teammate Yario Rodriguez defected in the 2023 WBC, but they chose not to. So I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, unless, there's geopolitical differences, of course. But Moinelo, I mean, he's so short and he's so small and like lanky, and yet he throws, mid 90s, and he has this 3,000 plus RPM curveball. And I mean, and then he added a kind of like a slurve slash sweeper later in the year as well to go with his slider and changeup. So, I mean, Moinelo, arguably the number one or number two starter in NPB going into 2026. Converting from a reliever to a starter has just been absolutely seamless for him, and he gets so much out of that small frame of his. Martinez, one of the most consistent closers, I think, really in history. I mean, this guy continues to put up like low ones to even sub one ERAs at times at a role as volatile as closer. This guy's had no problems. Great splitter, throws pretty hard. From a higher slot, he's obviously taller and larger than Moinelo, a bit more of a traditional kind of Cuban build. But yeah, I mean he's really filthy.
Yeah, and like you said, that Moinelo curveball is so gorgeous. It's so pretty. I'm really excited to see them get to throw to Omar Hernandez, Team Spain legend in the WBC, because Cuba probably like the highest variance team in the WBC, but like they are low key kind of looking dangerous with some of the commitments they've
Cuba's
gotten.
good, dude. Cuba's good.
Zach Neto on Cuba, Zach Neto. I'm like, what?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, they should be fun, and I will hopefully be in San Juan, Puerto Rico to watch them play. Finally, let's wrap things up with, I don't know, maybe the most interesting prospect in the world in Rintaro Sasaki. He bucks conventions to go to Stanford instead of getting drafted, which, you get a free ride to Stanford. Who can blame him? He goes to Stanford. He plays in draft leagues. He isn't really that good. I mean, he's not bad in his first season. Like, he had like around an 800 OPS. The slug was surprisingly not really that great with metal bats. And then you were covering this, and it was insane. But the SoftBank Hawks just thought, yeah, you know what? We'll just draft him. Why not? It's just for the jokes of it, I guess. When you're SoftBank and you never post players and you have, F off money, you can just do that and be fine and absorb that risk. What do you think about Rintaro Sasaki?
Rintaro Sasaki is forging his own path, and this is one of the most intriguing players, I think, in the entire world to follow. What is his decision going to be next summer? He can wait until then to decide, do I want to sign with SoftBank, or do I want to sign with whatever MLB team drafts me? He actually gets to see where he gets drafted in July first before he makes that ultimate decision in late July. But I think if he is a first, second, third round pick, he probably goes to MLB. If he's any lower than that, I think he chooses SoftBank. And again, NPB kind of curved their own rules on this. They've kind of made the Rintaro Sasaki rule where Japanese players in overseas schools in the US can now be draft eligible. That was not a thing before. Plus, he was a freshman. I mean, he's not even like a it's one thing if he's like a junior or a senior, but he's not. So he's going to be in his sophomore year next year. Let's be honest, his debut season was slightly disappointing, but there's an adjustment period. Obviously, he's going to Stanford, so academics are a big part of it. He's learning the language. There's a lot of off the field stuff you have to consider. So I think this 2026 season is going to be a really big test for him.
Yeah.
But if he does decide to come to NPB, then I think SoftBank will, one, give him the biggest signing bonus in NPB history. It's going to be bigger than, say, like a third round or second round, even slot bonus in MLB. And I have good reason to believe that they would give him a posting clause.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the fact that they are an anti-posting team, I have like good reason to believe they would actually give him a posting clause to convince him to come to NPB, because I don't think the reason that SoftBank doesn't give a posting clause, it's mostly financial related, right? Like if it's to convince a player to come to your organization, rather than waste their first round pick. I don't see why they wouldn't do it.
Yeah, for sure. And he has all the leverage in the world, because even if he's not taken in the first couple of rounds, like he could just be like, well, I'm still in school. I'm fine. Just,
Yep.
maybe things are changing. I just want to keep working on my degree or whatever. I like Stanford. It's a world-class institution. I'm just going to stay here. So,
Absolutely.
that's interesting to pay attention to. And something that is, I'm not going to talk about Rintaro Sasaki without mentioning this, but I have seen multiple times that Giants bullpen coach Taira Uematsu has visited him at Stanford, and he has gone to Oracle Park multiple times while he's been at Stanford. So, I'm not going to say there's something under the board happening, but there's some kind of relationship there. And keep in mind, he chose Stanford over UCLA. So
Yeah, and over Vanderbilt, and he values the academics, and he seems to like the area as well.
Yeah. So hopefully he'll be putting on the orange and black come next year's draft, along with Mathis Murant of France and Paul Schmitz of Germany. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I have anything else to talk about unless there's anything else you want to bring up.
No, I mean, we could go on for like 3 hours if we wanted to hit on like every single player that might be posted. You got Taisei, you got Hiroto Saiki, Atsuki Taneichi, Chihiro Sumida, like Teraraki Sato, by the way,
Shugo Maki.
Shota Morishita, Shugo Maki. Again, we could just go on forever and ever. But yeah, let's keep it to there for now.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me, Yuri. It was an absolute pleasure to talk NPB, something I don't get to do all that much because, I've kind of made my brand on European stuff and African stuff occasionally, but I'll never forget my roots of following NPB in high school. Please let the people know where they can find you and find your wonderful work, especially with your player dashboard stuff, because that stuff is awesome. And I used quite a lot of them in researching for this video.
Yeah, people can find me on X or Twitter at Yakyu Cosmo. That's where I'm most active. I'm also doing newsletters weekly for JapanBall.com. I do videos on their YouTube channel now as well. I do weekly articles for World Baseball Network covering like various more like breaking news type stuff related to Japanese baseball. And then I have my website, yakyucosmo.com, where I have contemporary NPB stats going back to 2020. I'm continuously adding to it. And in 2025, I started to do a lot more in the advanced category, underlying under the hood numbers. And yeah, you can go to the dashboard on yakyucosmo.com to get player percentiles and great stuff like that.
Well, thank you so much, man. It's a pleasure as always. People, please go follow him. And please share this video if you're watching it on YouTube. Leave a rating if you're getting this on your podcast feed. And until next time, stay safe out there and see ya.